Utility crews in Ukraine scramble to restore power as temperatures drop and Russian strikes continue. Stay or flee. Residents in Ukraine's southern city of Kherson are faced with a difficult choice as Russian attacks intensify. A show of defiance. Demonstrations sweep across China amid anger at the government's strict COVID-19 measures. Utility crews scrambled to restore power, water and heating in Ukraine. According to electricity producers, they're now supplying 80% of power against a backdrop of freezing temperatures. It's despite the onslaught of further Russian strikes in eastern and southern regions on Sunday. In his nightly address, President Volodymyr Zelensky said that Ukraine's unity is a sign of its strength. He said that together and helping each other, we will pass this challenge of war as well. This winter, Russia's attempt to use the cold against people. Meanwhile, the Belgian Prime Minister visited Bucha and Borodyanka. Alexander De Croo had a look at the largest mass grave discovered in Ukraine, with more than 450 bodies. If you've seen this, then I cannot imagine how you're going to negotiate with Russia, he said. After this, our only goal can be to help liberate Ukraine. In Borodyanka, more than 1,000 buildings were destroyed. But despite everything that's happened, around 80% of the inhabitants have returned here. Residents in Ukraine's recently liberated city of Kherson are facing a difficult choice. Stay and receive food donations despite the harsh winter amid intensified Russian bombardments, or decide to leave their homes in the southern city for a better chance of survival. Kherson has become the second Mariupol, said volunteer Viktor Mirinov. Now we need to get as many people out as possible. There's no electricity, water and food, he explained. Help is needed. Hospitals need help. They need medicine. We need to do as much as we can so our people have a warm place to stay and be provided with all the necessities. Reports say that Russian forces are digging in further east of Kherson. With the recent intense shelling, civilians are increasingly choosing to flee.
Holding white pieces of paper in a show of defiance, demonstrations in China have spread across the country. Protesters are angry over the harsh COVID-19 measures. On the third day of protests, some of the activists were shouting out against the Communist Party and its head of state, Xi Jinping.
We want basic human rights. We want freedom. We want to free our country from this on fire, absurd regulations.
For my home, for my country, for my people, because I'm Chinese.
We don't want any coronavirus tests, this woman says. We want freedom. We have human dignity. We are human, says this man. We are Chinese. We need constitutionality. Over in Shanghai, there are reports hundreds of people clashed with police on Sunday night. People also took to the streets in Wuhan and Chengdu. Meanwhile, coronavirus infections in China are soaring in recent days, with nearly another 40,000 new COVID cases on Sunday, triggering more lockdowns. Hunger and illness is increasing as the number of displaced people in Yemen rises. That's according to warnings from the United Nations Refugee Agency. The UNHCR also warns the risk of gender-based violence is rising due to a lack of funding. At this camp, people are complaining about the lack of basic healthcare services and medical centres. Some aid is getting through, though. Qatar Charity has provided relief to those affected by the floods. Food packages have so far helped more than 800 families. Women's rights and education activist Malala Yousafzai has called on global leaders to remember the plight of women in Afghanistan. During the Action for Afghanistan rally in London, she urged governments to not stand silent and to also do more for Afghan girls. The protest comes as the lives of females in Afghanistan have become more severely restricted since the Taliban took control of the country last year. The 25-year-old also called on the UK government to hold a global summit on women's and girls' rights in Afghanistan. A landslide in Cameroon's capital has left at least 14 people dead. Dozens remain missing as rescue teams continue digging through the rubble in Yaoundé. Officials say the area is a very dangerous spot and advise residents to leave before authorities arrive to clear the site. The tragedy happened during a funeral ceremony on a football pitch on Sunday when an 18-metre high embankment collapsed.
Violence broke out in Brussels after Morocco's 2-0 victory over Belgium in the World Cup Sunday night. Around 150 people set fire to rubbish bins, broke city equipment and damaged vehicles. Police used water cannons and fired tear gas to disperse the crowds as fans with Moroccan immigrant roots celebrated enthusiastically. The kids are crazy. They are 14 or 15 years old and they're breaking everything. I have a business here. All the scooters, everything, they broke everything. It's not fair play, it's just soccer. We have to try to keep some joy and cheerfulness. I don't understand this violence. Frankly, it's very disappointing. Our youth is disappointing. Parts of the Belgium capital were sealed off and the subway and trams had to be interrupted on police orders. It wasn't just in Brussels. There were also disturbances in Antwerp and Liège.
After their narrow 3-2 win against Ghana in their Group H opening, Portugal comes up against more tough opponents in the shape of Uruguay. Portugal boss Fernando Santos has some headaches to consider after PSG midfielder Danilo Pereira suffered 3 fractured ribs in training. Uruguay, meanwhile, will be looking to get their first win of the tournament. After a lackluster 0-0 draw with South Korea, the South American nation will be relying on their attacking prowess in Luis Suarez, Edison Cavani and Liverpool's Darwin Núñez. In Group H's other game, South Korea play Ghana in a vital game for both sides. Group G will also play out its second round of matches. Euronews reporter Adel Halim in Doha can bring us up to speed.
Switzerland training here at the University of Doha ahead of their Monday clash with Brazil. Both sides sit atop the Group G leaderboard after winning their opening matches of the tournament. But the South Americans didn't unscathed. Both Neymar and Danilo will miss Monday's match after sustaining ankle injuries in the opener. But Coach Tite's squad has plenty of firepower, and the Brazilians aim for their record-extending 6th World Cup title and first in 20 years. In the other Group G fixture, Serbia and Cameroon battle it out at Al Janoub Stadium, hoping to keep their round of 16 hopes alive. Adel Halim, Euronews, Doha.
Dresden wants to become carbon neutral in the next few years. The capital of the German state of Saxony has been selected by the European Commission as part of its 100 climate neutral and smart cities by 2030 project. City leaders selected the Johannstadt district as a pilot area to test some innovative solutions. The neighbourhood has quite a few prefabricated housing estates, built soon after the war. The focus now in more recent buildings is on energy conservation. At the Johanna Elementary School 102, heating is controlled by the digital twin system. It's an innovative piece of kit which allows the school to save a lot of money on its bills. A monitor of the project said, "We measured the energy savings via heat meters and found that in very good years we can save up to 42% of energy at peak times. In other years we can save around 30%. Dresden's city government is also active when it comes to transport. By the end of the year, the city will have 65 so-called Mobi points. These hubs connect public transportation with charging stations for electric vehicles, bike sharing and e-car sharing.
This year alone we will generate 1 million trips with our bike sharing system. We'll do 50,000 car sharing trips and we're already replacing up to 5,000 private cars with our system. And we plan to expand it even more."
The 400 municipality-owned vehicles are expected to be almost all electric by 2025. Other energy-saving measures have also been implemented in the residential sector, such as the renovation and expansion of district heating systems. Together with Valencia in Spain and Antalya in Turkey, Dresden is one of the 3 lighthouse cities selected as pilot projects for the EU-sponsored Match-Up programme.